Hey, Chandler here, and in this video I want to talk about 3 principles for expectations setting and expectations management. Now, I believe that almost all problems in business come down to one of 3 things: misset expectations, unmet expectations, or worse, no expectations at all. So when I talk about this concept of expectation setting and expectations management, obviously expectation setting is at the start of a relationship, and expectations management is a never-ending pursuit, right? This continuously goes on as you go. And so this works with customers, this works with employees, this works with vendors and people that you work with. It also works with shareholders. It works with your spouse or with your partner, really anyone that you're in a relationship with, in a working relationship or partnership with. And I think this is so important. And really for me, nothing drove this home quite like working at Student Painters. And they really had a high care and intentionality around expectation setting. And it was built into the hiring process. You have an expectation setting conversation. It was built in with employees. It was built in with customers. It was built in with vendors. And it's kind of this flash course. So if you don't know what Student Painters is, it's this internship. They teach you how to run a business by running a house painting company or a house painting business. I like to say it's kind of like the Navy SEALs, their version of Hell Week. It's that for business, except it's 7 months long. So you're just getting your butt kicked just over and over and over again. And you realize it comes front and center, the importance of clearly communicating expectations, whether it's with your painters, whether it's with your customers when you've never painted a house before, whether it's with your door knockers and people who are knocking on doors to get leads, your vendors. Sherwin-Williams was our big vendor. Like all of those things kind of drove this concept home. So what I want to do is talk about in this video why it's important and how do you properly set and manage expectations. There's really 3 principles for expectation setting and expectation management. So what I want to do is go through those 3 principles, and then I'll apply them to customers, vendors, and employees. Principle number 1, under-promise, over-deliver. Right? Maybe you've heard this, maybe your parents have taught you about this, maybe you learned this in school, but I think it's so important to always set the bar as like, hey, here's what I think it's going to be or what I'm going to tell you that it is, and then we can exceed that. So you're setting yourself up for success. You're going to have happier customers. You're going to have happier employees. All those things are going to be better because you first do this. Now, let me give you some examples on how we do this at Self-Publishing School. So one simple way is in response times for customer support. So anytime anyone sends in a customer support ticket, we say, hey, you're going to get a response back within 24 to 48 business hours. And then internally, our green line is less than 24 hours. So we always want to beat that. But when we're setting expectations, so as soon as someone submits a ticket, we say 24 to 48 hours, and then we beat that, and preferably less than 24 business hours. Same thing with employees. When I'm hiring people, I say, hey, this is going to be really tough. I'm going to push you. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to hold you accountable. I'm going to make sure that you grow. It's going to be difficult. It's probably going to be the hardest job that you've ever had. You're going to work 45 to 50 plus hour weeks, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Right? And then when they come in, I know that, they'll probably work at least 40 to 45 hours, but now that expectation has been set, right? So if people are coming in thinking, oh, this is a 40-hour a week, clock in, clock out kind of job, that's not it. That's not what they're going to be doing here. And so I've set proper expectations, and then I'll exceed those expectations. And then lastly, with vendors. So if you're talking about, especially, specific to us working together or payable terms or anything like that is, that's the specific examples. We'll say, hey, we're going to pay your invoice within 60 days, and we might pay it within 30 to 45 days, right? So under promise, over deliver. Principle number 2, clear and honest conversations. And, I believe that a difficult conversation now is much better than a tough situation later. So I'd rather have the difficult conversation now, and I'd rather have clear, honest communication up front with everyone that I'm working with. So this is important, again, with customers. If you're in the sales process and they say, hey, can you do that? Say no if you can't do it, or set expectations and have clear conversations that hold them accountable, that set boundaries, all those things. It's important with employees. Have a difficult conversation, either in the hiring process, in the onboarding process. If someone is in the onboarding process and they're not doing well, I'd rather let them know immediately and say, hey, you got to fix this, or in their 90-day eval, or their 1-year eval, or just in an expectation setting conversation. I'm going to have a clear and honest conversation sooner than later. And if you always prioritize those, if you always shoot people straight, then they always know where they stand, and expectations are being set, and in a lot of cases reset. Right? Because it's one thing to have that conversation up front in the hiring process. And I feel like, most people are a little bit better about doing that, but where they don't do it because it's uncomfortable is in the day-to-day. So I've got a separate video on how to have difficult conversations with your team, especially. So if this is with people that you manage or lead and things like that, highly recommend checking out that video. That's kind of a good, from a mindset perspective and from a skill set perspective, it kind of walks you through how to approach those difficult conversations. But again, have those difficult conversations sooner than later. Number 3, always over-communicate. And again, this is in context of customers, employees, vendors. The unsaid, people's mind goes to a vacuum. My mom always told me growing up, she said, if you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me, right? So if I'm assuming that you know something, we're both probably gonna end up frustrated and embarrassed. And when in doubt, over-communicate. And I cannot stress this enough. When in doubt, over-communicate. When in doubt, over-communicate. If I'm communicating something and I think you might be clear, well, I'm gonna over-communicate and say, hey, when can I expect to get this back to you? Okay, can you recap what we just talked about? Hey, it sounds like maybe you're confused on this. Just to be clear or to clarify, those are 2 of my favorite phrases when it comes to this. So to be clear, and then I'll recap what they said. Hey, when am I gonna get this back to you? What is the definition of done? What did we agree on? And then I think this is super important. If it's a verbal conversation, recap the conversation in written notes. I've messed this up so many times, whether it's with vendors, customers, employees. And so just recapping those conversations. And this is especially important with team dynamics. So whether it's an evaluation, whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's a reprimand, or I'm having that difficult conversation, well, I'm gonna follow up on that difficult conversation with a written recap of what we just talked about. So there you have it. Those are the 3 principles for expectation setting and expectation management. And again, I think this is one of those things that is just so fundamentally important and no one ever talks about it, right? It's like, it's the underlying thing that builds team dynamics, creates happy customers, creates happy working relationships, and it's a non-sexy thing, so people just don't talk about it. But it underpins everything that you do. So I encourage you, implement this in your day-to-day relationships with all the 3 parties that I mentioned, and just watch those relationships flourish and watch people's mindsets go up. Because if I said, hey, this is gonna be a really tough 3 months, and I've said that, well, now you're prepared for a really tough 3 months, right? And so those 3 months or that year or that whatever is gonna be much better because I'm setting and managing expectations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and takeaways from this video. Comment below. What's your biggest takeaway from this video? How do you properly set expectations with people that you work with? Comment below. Seriously, do it right now. Let me know your takeaways. Click like on this video and then click the subscribe button to this podcast or to this YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.